So I'll turn this over to Garrett.
All right. So, last section. So, thanks everyone for sticking it out. The previous section with Chris was talking about over organizing basics, right? So, we've covered our key values of the party. We've covered the basics of the platform. We've covered some history of the party, where it comes from, how it's an activist and an electoral party movement, and some basics of organizing that Greens use to build the party and build the movement. So, kind of the last question to answer here is how do we join together, right, to do that organizing work within the Green Party? So, let's talk about the structure of the Green Party and how you can get involved. Next slide, please. All right. So, the first question is to talk about how the party is structured. So this means kind of the rules, the bylaws, and how the party as a whole makes decisions, right? How do we come together to talk about issues and make decisions? That's what we mean by structure. And the structure of the Green Party is very different on purpose from most other parties, especially the Democratic and Republican parties, because they're based in, of course, very capitalist ideologies and mindset that's designed to keep power with the wealthy, with the folks that have been in the party a long time and all that stuff, right? So those capitalist parties tend to be very centralized. To put the wealthiest and all in charge, and then they make decisions, they make marching orders, and they expect everyone else to kind of follow through. The Green Party is the opposite. We want to invert that. Instead of a top-down structure, we want to have a bottom-up structure where issues are discussed and decisions are made starting more at local levels, and then they trickle kind of upward, so to speak, from local levels to state levels to the national level. And so this party structure embodies our values of grassroots democracy and decentralization that come from our 10 key values. What this structure does is it empowers local and state parties to act mostly autonomously, as long as they're in line with Green values. So as we talked about with organizing tips, the organizing conditions in states and even cities in the same state can be very different depending on the challenges that you face there, whether they're challenges with how the electoral law works there. You might have very different, cultures or history or whatever that you have to deal with. There might be different geographies that, relate to the history and the culture and all that you have to take into account when you're developing your organizing strategy. So it's not usually very useful or effective to make this top-down policy and say every state party has to do exactly this set of checklist items, right? 1, 2, 3, go down the list. That tends to not be so helpful because of all of these differences in how the laws work and history and all that stuff. We want to encourage our local and state parties to act autonomously, independently, and to tailor their focus and their strategy and their messaging to whatever those specific conditions are that they're facing. As long as, of course, all of that messaging and action is in line with our 10 key values and in line with our larger goals. So to empower the local and state parties to do that, the National Party was envisioned as a federation of state parties and caucuses. We'll talk about that. It might be a little different from how the term caucus is used in other contexts. But the National Party is a federation of state parties. So that means it's not really an independent entity that tells state parties what to do. It's the combination, the cooperation of all the state parties together in a national structure. So every state should have a state party that's affiliated with the National Party. But in addition to these state parties, we also have national identity caucuses that are recognized in a sense the same as a state party, but whereas state parties are based on geography or based on the borders of a state, right? The identity caucuses are nationwide, and they're based on a particular identity, depending on what caucus you're talking about, in order to try to make sure that communities that have been suppressed through U.S. history have a little bit more say, right? Have a little bit more ability to get involved in the Green Party and politics as a whole. And so representatives or delegates, more specifically, from state parties and caucuses get elected to serve in the Green Party National Committee, which is the main structure of the National Party that makes decisions. But again, it should be bottom up. We use the term delegate instead of representative because delegates should actually be carrying out the decisions that were made at a local level. That's the difference. A representative goes and makes decisions on their own, and you hope, right? You assume that they actually represent people, but they make that decision kind of top down. The representative goes and says, "This is what I'm doing," right? A delegate should be the opposite. A delegate should meet with all of their members, all of their constituents, and that local group or that state party makes a decision and then tells the delegate, here's what we expect you to do based on our decision that we've made locally. So it's a bottom up process as opposed to top down, or at least it should be ideally. That's what we're going for.